You're listening to Your Money, Your Purpose, the podcast where money meets meaning. Hosted by financial advisors Billy Zarello and Brian Eckert, this isn't your typical advisor podcast. Around here, we don't just talk spreadsheets and strategy, we talk stories, behavior, beliefs, and the emotional side of building real wealth. Each week, Billy and Brian take turns diving into either the technical side of money, like investing, tax strategy, and planning, or the behavioral side, like money patterns, mindset, and emotional clarity. Along the way, they'll be joined by expert guests who bring fresh insight to both. This podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not financial advice, and the views shared are those of the hosts and guests, not necessarily those of their firms. Let's get into today's episode.
All right, everybody. I am so excited for this chat today. I have my good friend on here, Jenn Recla. We actually met on LinkedIn. And so, that's the power of LinkedIn, social media working at its finest. And so I'm really excited about this because I'm all about everything leadership, right? And, we often talk about leadership just from, the people that we lead or the people that are on our teams. But leadership starts with us, right? It starts with us first. And so we're going to be talking about all the different things and really about connecting leadership and money together, right? Because this is a money podcast. We talk about money, not just the technical side of money, but we talk about the emotions, how you feel about money. So all those things are super important. And so without further ado, Jenn, how are you doing? It's your Friday. You were just talking about that. You're super excited. So how are you doing?
Yeah, it's my Friday. We're off the next couple of days to go camping out west in Colorado, and we're doing a digital detox. So yes. I planted the seed with my kids, 8 and 10, in the car a couple of days ago and said, what do you think about no phones, no tablets, no video games, no movies? And they're like, even in the car on the way there? How long is that? 3 hours. And then they started coming up with all these ideas. We could play games. We could do coloring. We could do this. We could do that. So they magically agreed to it. And I'm really excited to just be offline for 4 days.
Yeah, look at those leadership skills, everybody.
Influencing and persuasion is an important parenting and leadership skill.
I remember going on trips as a kid because we're both old enough to, not when we were taking trips that we didn't have phones and all this cool stuff. I remember playing car bingo. Do you ever remember that? Like
with the licenses?
Yes, licenses. Oh, there's an A. There's a B.
Yes, we did that and reads. I read in the car. No, not everybody can do that, but I read a lot in the car. Or honestly, it was a lot of staring out the window and just daydreaming.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Letting your mind wander for a little bit. Right.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so excited for you. I think that's so amazing to just detox for a little bit, especially just with family, make some memories. And that's what it's all about. So I'm really excited. So, but yeah. So like I said, I'm excited to talk about all things leadership and really talking about how that connects to the money decisions that we make. And so, but before we get into all that, let everybody know who you are. I mean, obviously you already told us your name, but a little bit about you and what you do. And let's start there.
So I always like to start back to after college. I went to college for theater, and then I lived out in Hollywood for 3 years trying to make it as a movie star and a film star. So it's kind of the foundation of my career. And then it went burp, 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 burp. So after 3 years, it did not work out for me. And so I came back east from Maryland originally and said, what the heck am I going to do? I had no idea. Found a temp job at a hospital. Wasn't really what I wanted to do, but I just needed some money, and met this amazing woman who was my leader. And she just had this great combination of challenging me. I felt like she cared about me as a person. She put me in great situations that were good for my growth. And she said, go back to school, get your master's, work this job. I'm going to help you become a leader too. And so she did. And I worked there for several years. Worked in operations management that led to a leadership position. Then I discovered while I was in my master's program, I want to be teaching this leadership stuff. I want to be
Yeah.
in front of the classroom, but not in an academic setting. I want to do that within organizations. So I kind of segued into a process improvement facilitation role, and that opened the doorway for me to step into organizational development, learning and development, really helping to coach, mentor leaders, design leadership development programs, to lead workshops. I led the learning function at a few different organizations, mainly in the nonprofit, healthcare, human services space. Absolutely loved it. And then I said, I want to be doing more of the workshop design and the teaching and the coaching. And as you get higher in leadership, you don't get to do that as much. So I said, I'm going to go out on my own. And I started my business, and that's what I'm focused on now. I work mainly with nonprofit senior leaders, helping them to navigate their workload, get their weekends back, lead with confidence, and build high performing teams. And I do that through one-to-one coaching and strength-based team development.
I love it. And, one of the things, and we'll definitely put this in the show notes so people can go find you and stuff like that. But
sure.
One of the things I love that you post about on LinkedIn specifically is you talk a lot about, personality exams, right? You talked about one today, the Frank Clifford one, right?
Yeah.
And when we were first talking about, doing this episode together, we specifically talked about one called the Insight. Right. The
Insights.
I think that's what it's called, right?
Yeah.
And for those that don't know what that is, right? Can you kind of explain what that exam is and what it does?
Yeah.
There's so many ones, right? The DISC assessment.
Oh, there's so many.
There's so many, right? So
yeah.
Maybe somebody doesn't know specifically what this is, and so maybe explain that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many tools out there, and there are different uses for them. Really, at the end of the day, what they help to establish is more self-awareness for individuals, and then they create a common language among teams. Insights Discovery is one of my favorites. It's actually very similar to DISC. It's based on Carl Jung's psychology, and it really uncovers communication styles, communication preferences, and how we prefer to relate to others and the world around us. So for some of us, communication, when we're brainstorming ideas, we like to do that out loud. Let me just talk about this out loud. Let me just think through this out loud. And so individuals that communicate that way, sometimes it can come off that we're going in tangents because it's not a fully formed thought. Versus individuals who like to process information internally, I'm thinking through things. Before I'm going to share with you, it's going to be a fully formed thought. It doesn't mean I'm not engaged. Doesn't mean I don't want to participate in the conversation. I just have a different preference around communication. So that's just a couple of examples of how that assessment tool shows up. And it's really great for collaboration. It's great on work teams. It's great for understanding how to communicate with your employees, how to communicate with your peers, how to communicate with your leaders. And it works in marriages too.
Yeah, I love that. And that's the one thing that, we talked about it, right? We talked about, one of the reasons that there's often disconnect is a lack of communication, a lack of intentional communication. And so let's talk about that a little bit from a money standpoint. So when you're helping, teams of people like that, is that a problem that you see a lot of teams run into, like the lack of communication, and it's because maybe they don't know how to communicate with each other?
100%. I would say that's probably one of the biggest problems that comes up over and over again is communication. Now, it's such a general, broad topic, right? But there's just natural tension that comes with these preferences. So I'd mentioned the speaking out loud or internal processing. Another piece that is uncovered in this assessment is around decision making. So some individuals have a preference to lead with logic when they're making decisions versus leading with emotions or feelings. So I'm going to ask you a question, Billy. I want you to think about a big purchase decision that you made recently, like maybe when you purchased your house or you purchased your car. Do you have an example in mind?
Yes, actually, it's the most random example, but it is. We just bought a new chicken coop.
A new chicken coop. Okay.
The one that we have was built by me, which is, first time building something like that. Yes, you can just imagine. So living in Lancaster County, there's plenty of woodworkers around here. So buying a professionally built chicken coop this time.
Yes. Well, I have so many other questions, but I'm not going to divert. That is my communication style. So I'm not going to divert. Coming back to the chicken coop, what were some of the first things you thought about when making the purchase decision?
Yeah. So the first thing that I thought about was, I tend to go to price first, right? Like
Okay.
that's kind of
Yeah.
just where I go, like, ooh, how much is this going to cost, right?
Yeah.
The second thought was, can I do this myself, right? Can I build this by myself for cheaper, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thought is like, do we actually need this, right? Is this
Yeah.
something that we actually need?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are kind of like when I'm looking back at it, those are the things that I've
first
remembered
ones.
going through my head.
Yeah. And those are all more logic based focus, right? Pricing. My husband loves spreadsheets. So he would have a spreadsheet and he'd have all these different categories. Like if we purchase a house and I would price, what's the walkability scale? What are the school ratings like? Like what's the distance from my work? Things like that. So very logic focused. Somebody that is more feelings or emotions focused, they might be thinking about the experience for the chickens.
Yeah.
Right. Or even the experience for us. Like, is it going to take a lot to clean? Like, is it going to be right? Or is it going to be one of those chicken coops that is going to enhance the loudness of my chickens? I don't even know if that's a thing, but you might be thinking more about the experience and how are the chickens going to feel? How am I going to feel about this versus, I have a lot of pride in me building something on my own. So it doesn't mean that we don't think with both. Because we do. We think with logic and we think with emotions. It is just some of us have a tendency to go to emotions and feelings first, and some of us have a tendency to go to logic first. And that's where a natural tension can happen. If I am sitting with my team and we're trying to make a decision and I lead with emotion and other members of my team lead with logic, and there's this conflict there, using an assessment tool like this, I have awareness that that's their preference. So, and I can see the value in that and I can see the strength in that now versus if I didn't know that and I didn't have that awareness, why are they trying to piss me off and frustrate me? Like, why is there so much tension and friction? So friction and tension doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can be actually really helpful. Healthy conflict can be helpful. But when you have this understanding of what people's preferences and strengths are, you can find common ground a little bit more together. You can understand that, there's value in us using both in our decision making.
Yeah. I think what I heard you say too is like, especially like if I know my wife is, prefers this way of communicating, right? I start to build that empathy, right, for that person, right? And you start to, I think that's what, empathy and sympathy get mixed up all the time, right? But they're two completely different things. And, I think that helps. I think that's what helped me make that decision a lot quicker than I would have in the past. Was, okay, like I understand why she's thinking the way that she's thinking, why she wants this. She was talking about all the things like, oh, it's going to be easier to clean, right? It's going to be a better experience. Like it's going to be easier for us to get, the eggs out. They're not going to be like in a weird place. Like, and she's thinking about all these things and I'm thinking about the opposite. But again, I can empathize and she can empathize with me. Like, oh yeah, like this is, $3,900, right? For a brand new coop. Right. And it's like, so she's like, at the same time, we're both thinking about what each other wants out of this situation.
Yeah.
And I feel like we can come to a better decision. Would you agree? Disagree?
Yes, because it's a holistic approach. The insights profile, it's actually a circle. And there's 4 quadrants, and it is designed that way because it's a whole. And you don't have to be equal in all of those quadrants. The idea is that you're finding more balance in your team so that you have some of those direct extroverted communicators, but you also have those indirect more introverted communicators that are part of the conversation as well, and that we're creating space for everyone. That myself, as someone that's more extroverted, and I hear a question, I have an answer. It might not be a fully formed thought, but I have an answer right away. I'm also recognizing that I need to give space to my fellow peers who need more time to process, want to think it through before they share their ideas. Am I making sure I'm creating space for other people, or creating opportunities for individuals to be able to provide their thoughts in different ways? Maybe not out loud, but through chat, or if we're in person, that there's a sticky note exercise so we can all participate. So it's really about thinking about it more holistically and creating space for all preferences.
Yeah, and along those same lines, I know you talk a lot about this too, and I think it applies not only in the business world with teams and stuff like that, but it definitely applies to personal life, because we talked about, right, leadership starts with yourself first, and so like knowing your strengths, right? I know we talked a lot about that, knowing when to ask for help, right?
Yes.
I think that's a really underdeveloped skill. It is a skill, right? It's not easy to ask for help. So through this insight tool, I'm sure there's different, because there's 4 colors, right? So I'm sure each one of those has a different outlook on asking for help.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, there's nuances within that too, right? Because one tool only shares pieces of you, but there's so much more to individuals as well. The thing that I like to emphasize with this too, that I think is helpful, is strengths-based philosophy. This is all based on foundation of a strengths-based philosophy, which is, let's lean into the things that we're naturally talented at, that energize us, that strengthen us.
Mm-hmm.
And let's not spend energy and effort on the things that we're not great at, the things that weaken us. We're not ignoring them. We're just being really strategic about how we address them. So it's either, what are the strengths that I have that can help overcome them? Who on my team can I work with? Can I borrow strengths from? And we kind of become a powerhouse together. Or are there times where maybe I have to suck it up and lean into some of the things that I'm not so great at? And when I talk to people about that, there's almost like this relief. Because I think for a lot of us, we grew up in these workplaces where it's deficit focused, it's gap focused. I mean, so many performance reviews I've been part of are focused on like 80% of the conversations on all the things that you're not doing good enough or well. No, let's switch that. Let's focus 80% of that conversation on the things that you're doing well, and let's continue to strengthen those things and not feel guilty about the stuff we're not good at. That's where creating space to ask for help, I think, comes in, is letting go of the shame or the guilt of not being good at everything. You could try to be good at everything, but wouldn't you rather be great or excellent at a few things? And then work with other people who are also great and excellent at those complementary strengths. So that's what I really try to emphasize with people. And also, it's not just the guilt and shame, but the looking at other people, oh, they're just lazy, or they're a bad performer. Well, maybe they're just not leaning into their strengths. Once you shift that lens, it opens up so many possibilities.
Yeah. I mean, I just piggybacking off that, right? Leaning into what you do well and what feels natural to you, even in a relationship aspect, that plays out just as much as in a professional setting, is like, what is each person really good at in the relationship, when, specifically when it relates to money. And so like, but just because like I'm really good at X and Megan might be really good at Y doesn't mean that I shouldn't be involved in Y, right? Like I should still be involved in that, but it's not something that I'm taking on, right? Does that make sense? Like it shouldn't be something that, especially as a leader, I feel like, hey, like I don't want to be in the weeds doing all the paperwork, but Susan loves doing that stuff. But hey, I'm going to check in with Susan, see how she's doing, right? Like that's what I'm picking up here.
Well, as a leader, you're supporting, you're advocating, you're championing, you're coaching, you're staying curious. I think that's very similar into what you're talking about in financial decisions in a marriage too, right? My husband, he does the budget every month. He loves spreadsheets. He's so detail oriented and analytical. That is not my strength.
Yep.
But I'm great at making quick decisions. So while he might want to spend some time, lengthy time, I think longer than we need to make a financial decision, I like to try to shorten that timeline by asking some questions that really get at the not just the logic, but the emotional feeling side of things as well. But we both recognize we've got different strengths and we have learned to appreciate the differences that we have and how it can really help to bring me down from the clouds and bring him out of the weeds.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of leads into a question that I want to ask, right? Because, there are times I feel like where, somebody's dominant, we'll call it dominant energy, right? Really goes into overdrive, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe it's, you're overanalyzing, right? Everything.
Yes.
So how does one kind of address that, and how does that kind of affect maybe some choices that are made?
Yeah. So with any of the assessment tools that I use that reveal, your communication preferences or your strengths, there are unhealthy ways and healthy ways that these show up. And so part of conversations I typically have with individuals and teams is for people to identify them. Identify, where does this show up? Can you think of some examples where this has really served you well? And it's helped with your achievements and accomplishments. And then where does it trip you up? Where does it get you into trouble? So I think some of the first pieces of this is just being aware of that. And then starting to tap in, getting feedback from people, asking them, where is this helpful? Where is this helping you? And then where maybe does it show up that's not so helpful? And really appreciating the feedback that you're getting, taking it into consideration, applying what makes sense, of course. And so having those conversations, building that self-awareness, the feedback piece, I think is really important as well. And then there's some other tools that I use, especially with insights. I have this wheel that I use that gives recommendations for dialing up or dialing down certain color energies, because we actually use that language in there. So if maybe red energy is an example of one of the pieces, and individuals with lots of red energy, they're very action oriented, very focused, goal oriented. I don't care so much about the how we get there. I want to reach the goal.
Yeah.
And that is so powerful. It keeps the team focused. It can keep the momentum going. And when it shows up in unhealthy ways, it can come off as very aggressive or impatient or trying to push agendas no matter the cost. And so recognizing the different healthy and unhealthy, or this is me in thriving mode, this is me in survival mode, understanding those nuances for people is really helpful too. Once you're aware of it, it's not automatic, but when you become more aware of these things, you're more deliberate about how you show up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just thinking about it, because obviously, in a team setting and even in a big money choices and stuff like that, I feel like stress can impact those energies, right? I think,
yeah,
we can shift into a different energy. So, because a lot of times people will take these maybe personality exams or something like that, and they'll be like, oh, this is who I am. This is no matter what, this is my personality. But I think in different areas of our lives, the things that we experience, the stressors that we have, those can shift, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, when people take these assessments, there's a few things that go on in people's head, right? Is this a good assessment, Jen? Are these the right assessments? Is this going to be good for a leader? And no, neutral. All assessment results are neutral. It is a celebration of the value that you bring. It is not an excuse for bad behavior. Oh, well, I lead with this energy, so that's who I am. no, it's not about trying to change who you are fundamentally. It's about trying to leverage and capitalize on the good parts of this and help minimize the unhealthy sides. It is also about doing that with your teams as well, helping to leverage the best out of your teams too. So those are, some things that I like to share with people, and we don't want to weaponize them either, which sometimes happens with these tools where it's, oh, well, you're a red or you're a yellow or you're a blue, which I hate that language. No, we're not one thing. We can all pull from different characteristics, but weaponizing these, which is, it's very dangerous as well. This can be fluid. The way that you show up is going to be a little different every day, and just understanding what you can use to help you become a better performer or a better decision maker. That's really what you want to walk away with from these.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see, people, we love to categorize things, right? People love to put things in boxes and say, this is it, right? This is how I make sense of the world. But there's so much nuance, right? There's so many things that, so I just this random question, right? So do you see when you're giving, let's just take the insights as an example. Has there ever been an outlook on basically, like, does somebody have a different, let's just call it color, in their professional life versus their personal life, or is it usually, hey, like, they're both the same?
It varies. That's such a great question. It varies. In the profile that people get on the last, it's like the last page or two, there are two graphs that show, here is my conscious self and here is my less conscious self. So your conscious self is, this is how I show up. Okay, I'm going to be on this podcast with Billy, so I'm going to make sure my hair looks nice. I'm going to be camera ready. I have some ideas in my head of what I want to share. That is my conscious self. And then the less conscious self is, it's typically more of when nobody's looking. It's more of my candid self. And this is sometimes people interpret as, this is me in my work life, the conscious self. This is me in my home life, less conscious. Sometimes it's, this is me when I'm thriving. This is me when I'm in survival mode and stress. The interpretation of that is different. It all depends on the person, but that's where I have seen some people share home life and work life is a little bit different. And that opens up, I think, a whole host of other questions for that individual around authenticity, and do they feel like they can show up as themselves at work, as their real selves? And so, that leads to some other, really, I think, important conversations as well. But it depends, but it does happen.
Yeah, I really love the one word that keeps coming up to mind, right? And you talked about it a little bit, but like, really, these tools are about bringing awareness, right? Awareness to how we think, but more importantly, it brings awareness to how other people think. Like, there's my way isn't the highway.
Yes. Right? Absolutely. All of a sudden you're like, oh, they're not trying to make me mad or piss me off or ruin my day at work. They just have a very different way of seeing the world, the way of preferring to interact with the world. And all of a sudden, when you realize that, you can realize that they have a lot that they can bring to the table that you don't necessarily have.
Yeah. Yeah. And, prime example of that is, and we talked about this, but I don't think I've ever taken the insights, but I'm pretty certain just reading I'm a yellow. That's the one that's very extrovert, where my wife tends to be a little bit introvert. And so it's I think I used this example when we were talking, where I'll say an idea. I'm like, this is the greatest idea since sliced bread. I'm so excited about it. And then I share it with her, and she's already breaking it down. She's like, well, you got to do this and you got to do that. I'm like, no. Let's be excited. And I feel, but I internalize that is that she doesn't like my idea. Right. And then I could easily, if this was a team setting, in a professional setting, I'd be like, oh, well, Megan doesn't like me. Megan's a stuck in the mud. Like she doesn't know what she's doing. And then she's probably thinking about like, oh, Billy's always in the clouds, right?
Yeah, it's such a similar dynamic with my husband and I. Joke with him about, now I joke with him, but it didn't feel that way in the beginning. I call it balloon popping.
Yep.
Right? Like I'm just so excited about something. I'm ready to go. And he's like, but what about this? Pop. What about this? Pop. What about this? Pop. And I'm like, stop popping my balloons. But I think it's such an important thing for us to be aware of as leaders of that tendency. Are we someone that accidentally diminishes others' ideas? We don't mean to. It's not our intent. We just really want to be realistic about things. And we're really curious. So we ask questions to understand. But for the other person, it feels like you're questioning my idea.
Yep.
And so just understanding that perception and that dynamic, it shifts the way you approach situations in like such a more effective way.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And it's like, once I realized, like you said, like her communication style, and she was like, I was like, hey, like, do you not like that idea? She goes, no, like, I love the idea. I'm already thinking, like, I've gotten past that part of the conversation in my head. Like, oh, that's a great idea. Like, how do we execute it? Like, I'm thinking about executing it already. And I'm like, oh, that makes me feel a lot better.
Yeah, exactly. Our reactions are based on people's actions, right? Not necessarily their intent or what's behind that. And so we got to dig into that to really understand what's the intent behind that. What are you trying to accomplish? And we don't always do that.
No, we don't. And it does lead to some like you said, like early on in your relationship, but early on in leading people, I think, you always ask in some of your posts, like, what's one thing you would tell a leader, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't really necessarily believe like there's natural born leaders. You might have some tendencies of a natural born leader.
Sure.
But like, that's really a skill that needs to be sharpened every day.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's not just like when the lights are brightest, it's every day. It's the small conversations. It's the, the small interactions that really define that.
Yeah. I always say there's no arrival.
Yeah.
I am a constant work in progress.
Yes.
And I will constantly be learning. So there might be a North Star that I'm following, but I know I'm never going to reach it. And I'm okay with that because I'm still moving towards it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I know we've been like specifically talking about the insights, right? And I think it's a really good one for anyone to take, not alone, let alone in a leadership or professional aspect. So what is a way, I guess, how can someone use their profile to create better systems for themselves to manage their time? Because you talk about time management in a lot of your posts too.
Yeah.
Team, money, like what are some uses for that?
So for the team, my own team, my former team, we used this tool through the 5 years that I led them, and it helped us have some real conversations. It helped us have healthy conflict. And when you have healthy conflict, there's more innovation on a team. There is more creativity. There is more psychological safety because people feel like they can speak up and share their real thoughts and ideas, and they're not going to be shamed for it. They're not going to be punished for it. So for the team that I worked with, it really created more candor, psychological safety, trust, engagement, innovation on our team. And I saw our engagement scores went higher, our trust scores went higher, and the key performance indicators that we were needed to meet as a learning and development team, we were meeting and exceeding them. We were the team that other individuals wanted to come and work with. So that really helped us. And it helped us with connection, just understanding each other as individuals and having that empathy. With other teams that I worked with, we talked about how do we delegate differently? Right. So we have individuals that have really strong strengths, they're extroverted energy, they like presenting in front of others, but we have members on the team that are doing presentations that hate it. So how can we start thinking differently about who should be taking on which responsibility? When we are creating project teams, multidisciplinary teams, let's look at the mix of different communication preferences so that we're not all in one category together and get stuck in group think. So those were some of the ways to apply it. And then some of it was just I'm about to go into a one-on-one meeting with someone who has the exact opposite communication style. Ooh. Let me look at my quick communication tips sheet first to just kind of understand generally that, they prefer to direct communication, speak in bullet points. I prefer to have a lot of detail, so I'll have it there if they have any questions, but I'm not going to start there. I'm going to start real quickly with here's the high level bullet points, here's the ask, and then create some space for more of the background information. So I'm going to adjust my approach. I'm not changing who I am. I'm just adjusting, trying to be flexible in the conversation so I can meet them where they're at. So those are just a few of the ways. And then I guess for personal development, right? So now that I understand these strengths and these preferences about myself, how can I tap more into them? What specific growth goals can I create throughout the year so that I'm constantly developing?
I loved that one word that you said at the very beginning. What was it? Healthy conflict?
Healthy conflict. Yep.
Man, I mean, that is, I think that's what the world is lacking, right? Healthy conflict, right? It's okay to have differences of opinion, and on a team, in your relationship, it's what, if you're both saying, if everybody's thinking the exact same thing, there's, like you said, there's no innovation, there's no different ideas, there's no growth. It's just kind of gets stagnant. And when it gets stagnant, what do we do, right? We all think the exact same way, so we can't pull anything out of each other.
Right. There's a story from when I was a kid. I had a dance teacher, and I will always remember this. Her first husband, they got divorced, and she said, "Jen, we never fought. We never once fought, and that was a problem." And that has stuck with me my whole life. I am not looking for harmony. I'm not looking for discourse necessarily. But I think if you're in harmony, what's going on here? Is somebody not saying something? Right? If we are all agreeing with this, let me play devil's advocate here just to test the waters. Are we really in agreement, or is somebody not saying something because they're afraid to speak up?
That is so important. Especially like when I'm just thinking about some of my own clients, and the conversations they have with their spouse about money, it's like, you used to hear that as a badge of honor. We don't ever fight. We don't ever have disagreements. And I'm like, well, then you're not really having conversations. You're having those surface level conversations, and you're struggling on the inside.
Yeah. I remember it being in a retreat with my former team and me saying, it's okay if we piss each other off. We're going to piss each other off at times. That's okay, right? What makes us a great team is we can work through that and we can talk through that instead of fuming and talking behind each other's back.
Yeah, because like you said, there's always going to be a disagreement. There's always going to be some level of anger or something like that. But knowing how people communicate, how people think, we can move through it a lot quicker, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And even the way that we talk to each other, we know there's conflict. We know we're disagreeing, but I'm not attacking you, Billy, as a person. We're talking about the idea or the situation or the decision that we need. It's not personal. I think it's unhealthy when it becomes more of that personal attack.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where, when speaking specifically about money, and that's where the problems start to happen, right?
Yeah.
When you start specifically attacking, well, you spent money on this, right? This is your fault. This isn't my fault. This is your fault. And it's going back to good leadership, what you always preach about is hey, we win as a team, we lose as a team, right?
Yeah.
And that's the mentality I feel like a lot of people should take, not only in their professional life, but definitely in their personal life. Hey, we're in this together and we're going to get through it together.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, so much of leadership I've learned from my personal life and vice versa. There's a lot of transit or overlap in those
Yes,
areas.
yes, yes. And I would assume, because I don't have kids, but I would assume, like you said at the beginning, right? We were making the joke, but I'm sure these things that you've learned, these this level of communication helps communicate with your kids, right? Or at
Oh,
least aids that
100%.
conversation a little bit better.
Yeah, and I practice the skills on them all the time, like practice my crucial conversation skills, practice people first mentality and empathy and patience, all the things that you need as a leader as well. And so it's been such a great motherhood has been the best learning experience for me being a leader, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I am the same way. I practice all the time on my wife. Like I'll practice like NEPQ questions. I'll be like, I'll ask her something. She'd be like, "You're doing it, aren't you?" And I'm like, "What do you
Yes,
mean? What
yes. My husband, he'll call me out sometimes too. He's like, "Are you doing one of your like communication things for work?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. You want to talk about it?
Tell me more.
Yeah, tell me more about that. What are you thinking right now? Yeah, that's good. I love it. I love it. So, but I mean, today was amazing, right? I thank you so much for sharing a little bit about what you do, how it impacts our money choices,
Hmm.
and just our choices in general. And so,
Yeah.
like, I want to just end with two questions, right? So, one's going to be a money related question. It's
Okay.
something I always ask at the end. But then also, I'm really curious, like, if let's just talk about like from a personal standpoint, right? Let's talk about like in the sense of like husband and wife, or or partnership or whatnot. Like, what would be like if I were going to tell a client, hey, like you need to take this exam, right, in order to
Mm-hmm.
help you understand yourself a little bit better? What would be a recommendation that you might have for them?
For a specific assessment tool, do you mean?
Yeah. First, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it would depend, right? So I would say if somebody is really focused on their own personal development, I really want to grow my skills, but I don't even know where to start. Clifton Strength, I think, it's a great tool for that. It's a great tool for teams and collaboration as well. But I have just found for me, my own personal career development, professional development, that's been the best tool. When it comes to communication and trying to be a better communicator, I get feedback that I'm not a great communicator. I'm struggling with relationships. Insights Discovery, I think, is a great tool for that. If it's about productivity, where I am just struggling with getting stuff done at work, my team's struggling with that as well, I would say Working Genius is a great tool for that. It is mainly focused on productivity and where in the work process am I energized and where do I get frustrated? Because if I can shift my work around and I can shift the team's work around, that might help. And then the last tool I'll recommend is really great for individuals, especially those that might be in between careers right now and trying
Mm.
to understand, where do I go next? Do I want to shift careers? There's a tool called Standout that Marcus Buckingham created, and it is about uncovering the ways that you stand out at work. And it's even got some careers that would be good for these kinds of roles suggestions in the report as well. It used to be free. I don't know if it still is, but that's another great tool.
I feel like that would be a really good exam to give somebody that's like, like that's maybe about to go to college, right? I feel like that's
Yes.
like that would be a
Yeah.
really good tool for them, because I remember when I went to college, I was like, yeah, I'm just going to pick a degree and
Yeah.
see how this turns out.
Yeah, Clifton Strengths is great for that too. And with the Clifton Strengths and Standout go nicely together because Marcus Buckingham, who created Standout, wrote the definitions for Clifton Strengths. He used to work with Gallup. So he designed that tool as a good complementary tool, those two
Ooh,
together. Yeah.
I might have to look into that. That's
Yeah.
a good one.
It's a good one.
And so I always like to ask just a very general money related question, because I
Yeah.
think obviously this is a podcast about money, your purpose, all those things, right? And so
Right.
I always like to ask, what does, when you think of the word wealth, what does that mean to you?
The first thing I think about is not even money. It's my family. So when I think about wealth, I think about those people that I love the most, the closest to me. Are they happy? Do they feel fulfilled? Are they getting their needs met? And so for me, I feel very wealthy when it comes to my family. I've been married for, I think, 14 years now. We're in a great, fulfilling, happy marriage. I love my little munchkins. They drive me crazy at moments, but they are healthy. They are happy kids. We get to live in a beautiful state of Colorado. So my surroundings, that makes me feel wealthy. I love it as well. So it's those kinds of things. It's funny. Money's probably the lowest thing, right? We're at a point where we're having our needs met. We're not in a situation where we're struggling financially. So I do think there's a baseline for most people to get to that point. But outside of that, it's the loved ones, it's my surroundings, it's me. Do I feel fulfilled? That's what I consider wealth.
I love that. You already knew I was going to love that answer. But I love that you talked about your family. I love that you talked about, wealth probably to you is, like you said, you're about to leave on a trip and completely disconnect from the world and just hang out with your family and have a good time. That to me, that's wealthy. Like that's what wealth is. I'm not Jeff Bezos and need to spend $50 million on a wedding, right? Like,
no, gosh, to have that much money just stresses me out. And I don't
no. See, but yeah, and it's so there's a lot to say for that. But yes, before we jump off, tell everybody where they can find you, how they can get a hold of you for, if they want to use your services.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very active on LinkedIn, Jennifer Recla. You can find me there. And then I also have a website, Jenn Recla, JenRecla.com. Those are the two best places to find me. Yeah.
So again, I appreciate your time today. I hope that you have a really good trip. And you make lots of memories. That's something I always tell people, like, go make a lot of memories, right?
Yeah.
That's the one thing that you can take with you. Like you said, you can't take money with you. It's those memories, it's those things and stuff like that. But again, thank you so much for this. And I really appreciate it.
This was so much fun. I really appreciate the invitation.
Yeah. And so, well, anyways, everybody, we hope that you enjoyed today's show. Let us know if you did. Go check Jenn out. You're going to love her content. And you can feel the yellow energy through her content. I'll just say that, right? But anyways, have a good one. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Your Money, Your Purpose. We hope today's conversation gave you something real to think about. Just a quick reminder, this podcast is for educational purposes only. The opinions shared here are our own, or those of our guests, and don't necessarily reflect the views of the firms we work with. Nothing you hear on this show should be considered personal financial advice. Always talk with a qualified financial professional before making any decisions about your money. We're so glad you're here. Thanks again for listening.